Welcome everyone to Cheese in Depth. I'm Michael Landis, and today we are going to explore the world of English Blue Stilton, along with a couple other cheeses. And we're really fortunate to be able to have two of the most intelligent and dynamic men from England to be able to talk about this loved cheese. And we're also going to do a little pairings with them at the end. I'm not going to continue to talk. I'm going to turn it over to Kim and Martin, and they're going to walk you through this, and then we'll be tasting some cheese. So, Kim, Martin.
Thank you for the introduction, Michael. I'm not sure about the intelligence, certainly enthusiastic. We'll hopefully bring a lot of our enthusiasm for Stilton across this afternoon. So to introduce myself, I joined Clawson by accident some 40 years ago, leaving school, not quite sure what I wanted to do. Got a summer job working in the laboratory, technical department. And from there, I was encouraged to have a go at cheese making and spend a lot of my time in my formative years learning the craft of making Stilton cheese and grading the cheese, judging the quality, understanding how to make a good consistent Stilton. And for my sins, I had a short spell for a few years in the commercial department, selling the product, meeting customers around the world, but saw the light and came back to the production. So I hope to share some of my knowledge and skill and enthusiasm for Stilton with you this afternoon. Over to you, Martin.
Thank you, Kim. I'm Martin Harris. I've worked at Clawson for nearly 23 years now. I've been involved in the food industry since I was about 20, so probably about the same time that dinosaurs ruled the earth. But I've enjoyed my time at Clawson. The dairy industry is a fabulous industry as far as I'm concerned. But the last 15 years, I've been responsible for the export side of the business at Long Clawson, with particular focus on the USA. The USA is a very, very important market for us. About 70% of the products that we export go to the US. I've spent a lot of my time there over the years at the various food shows, and we work closely with a number of distributors. The business now exports directly to the USA, so we load our own containers at Clawson. These are based on orders that our customers send to us. The stock is made against the order, so it's fresh with the best shelf life. It's shipped from here directly to Port Elizabeth. The crossing takes around 10 to 14 days, and then the product is picked up by the distributors, usually within 3 or 4 days of the container being cleared. So the stock that's arriving in the US is absolutely optimum in terms of its quality.
Thanks. Just moving on, just to talk about the product range and how the cheese is linked with each other, and then we'll just pause for a second and then move on to tasting some product. So Stilton cheese is our core product. We also make a variant, so on the 3 pictures at the top, the second one is Blue Shropshire, and that is a slight variance on a Stilton, a slight modification of the starter and the process, and the addition of annatto into the milk gives a vibrant orange background and a slightly sweeter, more subtle flavour. And what we found is sometimes consumers have got a predetermined prejudice they won't like blue cheese, and we can normally persuade them to try the Shropshire. And when they try the Shropshire and they find it very pleasant, it's usually then easier to persuade them then to give the Blue Stilton a try. In the far right hand at the top is the Rutland Red, and that always has been intrinsically linked with the manufacturer of Stilton. Stilton, you know, in the early years was produced from spring milk for the Christmas market, and the farmhouse producers would find they'd have milk at certain times of the year they couldn't utilise to produce Stilton. Modern days, we've got storage facilities that allow us to do that. They didn't have refrigeration, so they produced a hard cheese, which is called a traditional Leicestershire Red. It's very similar to a cheddar, more open, flaky texture, the annatto, and it gives it a sweet, nutty flavour. So most Stilton manufacturers would have produced that. We're the only Stilton manufacturer that still produces a traditional Leicestershire red. And the two pictures on the bottom, we mentioned, or I mentioned earlier, that Stilton, the white Stilton, is used for blending. We found it's a very natural bedfellow with sweet flavours like apricots and cranberries and mango and ginger. And yeah, we'll touch on one or two of those when we come to the tasting in a minute. So what we're going to do now is move through a series of slides and talk about the product and taste the product. And I've got some cheese which I'm going to taste, and I think, Michael, I'm not sure if you're just going to interject with me and Martin as we go through these tasting sessions now, but we're going to start with the White Stilton. For these talks, White Stilton, it's quite important for me to talk about White Stilton, and I'll hold it up so everybody can see the White Stilton. So the White Stilton is just a piece of blue cheese. So it is the Blue Stilton manufactured product that is 10 days old. So if you went to any of our cheese stores and took what we started out to make a blue cheese, cut it in half, that's exactly what you'd see. You'd see a cheese, it's probably not very hard to see. If I come closer, you'll see it's slightly open textures and some fissures and cracks, and that's what we've been looking for in our blue cheese. And over the years, local people realised they liked a young, slightly acid cheese. So it's very crumbly, it's slightly dry in the mouth, you know, it flakes, it crumbs, and it's got a acid, slightly yogurt flavour. So if you taste the cheese, it's like tasting a natural yogurt. It's got a clean, natural yogurt flavour. And that, as we mentioned, lends itself perfectly for blending with our fruit flavours. So that's what you'd see in a blue Stilton before you started to pierce it to encourage the blue mould to grow. So before anybody asks the question, why doesn't the blue mould grow in the White Stilton? Because we produce a lot of White Stilton. The process is the same, with the exception of adding the penicillium roqueforti into the cheese. So same starters, same process, same methods of handling the cheese. We just don't put the blue mould culture in. So moving on, a young blue cheese, and what do we mean by a young blue Stilton? So, you know, we talked about the graders grading those cheese around 14 days old. So this is a piece of cheese, and I'll hold it up again. This is a piece of cheese that the graders, just navigate to my camera, the graders would have probably graded a couple of days ago. So it is very young cheese there, and that gets graded out of our cheese rooms, and our cheese rooms are reasonably warm, and we move them into cooler rooms. We want to, once the blue mould appears, we want to mature it very slowly, because in maturing it slowly, we allow the processolysis, we allow the blue mould cultures to break the proteins down to give the traditional very smooth, creamy texture. So when you taste this cheese, you cut the cheese again, you know, I'll hold it up, it crumbles, it's crumbly a little bit like the White Stilton. When you taste it, it's still young, fresh, you've still got some of those slightly acidic notes. And sometimes on young cheese, you would expect a little back note of bitterness coming from the blue mould culture. But certainly what you wouldn't be expecting is that cheese to be very soft and creamy and smooth as a mouthfeel, because that cheese typically would be 7 or 8 weeks old. For the US market, that's very important. What we've done is spend the last 20 years developing a process of shipping the cheese to the States, where we ship them in very carefully controlled temperature conditions. So we pick our cheese for our customers at 8 weeks old. So we're picking a very young, very crumbly, something we wouldn't expect you to enjoy or sell to your customers. But because we pick it at the right age and we control the shipping conditions, and correct me if I'm wrong, Martin, we're looking at about 3 weeks to ship the cheese from the UK to the States.
Yeah, on the water, on the vessel, yeah.
That allows that cheese to gradually and slowly mature in transit. So by the time it reaches you in America and it moves through the distribution system, the cheese is starting to reach optimum flavors and textures that we would encourage you and like you to enjoy eating our cheese. So moving on to the mature cheese. So what happens, what's the difference when you move on to the mature? Very little or no change in the coats. Whatever coat you've got, when the cheese grader grades that cheese, you know, when we ship it to you, when you receive it, that coat, the external surface of the cheese will be pretty much the same. The single biggest change between that young blue cheese and a mature is going to be the texture. It's going to be smooth and creamy because the proteins have started to break the cheese down. You've got a little bit of proteolysis in the early stages, and that breaks it down to give a nice, smooth, creamy mouthfeel. And it also starts to balance the flavour. So you get a beautiful balance of flavour between salt and the umami flavour of the Stilton. So, you know, a really, really good Stilton cheese is very hard to define a very single flavour characteristics. Usually it's a rounded, balanced flavour of the blue umami and the salts and the other characteristics. And one of the big things, and I'll do it on my cheese board and just show you, is because the cheese is broken down, you can get the knife and you can just run through the knife, and instead of it being crumbly, it will be nice, soft, creamy, almost to the point you can get a paste. But when you put that into the mouth, you've got that luxurious, soft, smooth, creamy mouthfeel. And the flavours are excellently balanced and there isn't that dominant flavour. So again, Michael, I think you've got some Stilton there. I don't know if you want to comment on any of the flavours and the characteristics you pick up on the Stilton.
You know, this is one of my favorite blue cheeses, obviously, in the world. And I love using this in teaching because it is probably the most approachable blue cheese because of the creaminess and the flavors. And it does pair up really well. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do with this. And I know at the end that we're going to chat about that. But what I thought would be fun is because it's so creamy and all of that, I've actually paired this up with a biscuit, and this is Effie's, and it's an oat biscuit, which I really wanted something that would be complementary, and I think oats work really well. And then this taste elevated booze time cherries, which is cherries soaked in brandy, amaretto, thyme, brown sugar. So it's really a wonderful flavor characteristic. They're the small cherries, but it's just so crazy rich in the flavor. And I thought that would be really fun with this. And so it's obviously magnificent on its own, but also being able to, I guess, dress it up a little bit. And, you know, the creaminess of the cheese alone is just amazing. I just really love the mouthfeel and the little bit of saltiness, which works well with, I think, the sweetness of the cherries. And beverage-wise, here in Tampa, we have Cigar City Cider and Mead, and they do a traditional golden English dry style that is absolutely fabulous with the cheese. So that's where I'm going with it.
Michael, yeah, just to pick you up, some very interesting thoughts there, Michael. So, you know, our thoughts back on this side of the pond would be that you said dress it up. I think very much complements, balances and complements, not necessarily dresses the Stilton up. And I think your choice of the chutney with the cherries is excellent. We always find anything with a little bit of sweetness balances superbly with the bitter notes. The two are superbly complementary. You know, the Stilton enhances the sweetness of the cherries and vice versa. And we drink, you know, in the UK, and certainly when we've travelled in the States, people know that Stilton is very synonymous to drink with port. It's absolutely superb with a fortified wine, whether it be a sweet wine or a port, because you've got that subtle note of sweetness, the same as your chutney. But you're absolutely right with people nowadays stepping out from tradition and looking for something different. And I would challenge you, and I can see some cans behind, and I guess we'll touch on that in a short while, is there's some fantastic traditional craft beers coming through, some of them with subtle sweet back notes, and they balance very well with Stilton. And we've got a craft brewery now, very close to the dairy, about 4 miles away. Been spending some excellent time experimenting them with some dark beers, some fortified dark beers, some stout beers, and they just work very well. But, you know, everybody's palate's different. And, you know, our overall message is enjoy the Stilton. And if you enjoy a particular drink or a chutney or way of eating it, or just uncrusted bread, is there to be enjoyed. But, you know, you can experiment and have a great deal of fun trying different things and finding what suits your palate. But in principle, you tend to find something with a slightly sweeter note does balance the bitter notes in Stilton very well. So, you know, I think your choice is excellent. I'd probably go, and we can get them in the UK, I'm not sure about the States, you can get some medium ciders with just that subtle sweet note running through it, and they sometimes, I think, for my palate, balance is better than a dry cider. But certainly, you know, try, experiment and enjoy would be our message, and spend many hours of good fun trying different drinks and combinations with the cheese. You know, that's an interesting point you brought about the mushroom. That's a little bit from the molds that you'll find in blue cheeses. It's a little bit more evident on Stilton because it's quite subtle and balanced. It tends to be hidden on other blue cheeses. And if you taste the blue cheese and just let it linger in your mouth a little while without putting any complements with it, just towards the back of your mouth here, if you think about it and you close your eyes, you will pick up, as Michael said, that very, very subtle chestnut mushroom flavour at the side and back of your mouth. And you know, you can pick that up on Stilton because it is more balanced and more subtle. You know, some of our competition coming out of Europe, if you think of things like Roquefort, you know, they have singular kind of very dominant flavors. With Roquefort, you tend to pick up quite a salt note. You certainly pick up, they use milk that's made from the cheese, so they tend to be a used milk flavor with salt. Danish Blue tends to be hugely salted. The dominant flavor in there is salt. If you look at some of the Italian blues, they've got a different starters, different complex, and they've got quite a sweet, almost sweet, sickly note, but they tend to have one single very dominant flavor, where Stilton tends to be quite balanced and quite subtle. And each time you taste it, if you think about it, you usually think, I can pick up a slightly different flavor or note on the cheese. So we're not tasting Blue Shropshire, we said we'd just touch on it. So the Blue Shropshire is made very similar to Stilton, but we just slightly alter the starter cultures and add the annatto, so it gives a strong, different visual marker to people. Then it's interesting, we do sell it into the States, and if people are reluctant to try Stilton cheese, I would just say, you know, it's an easier way, it's a softer way to encourage people to just try a blue cheese. And, you know, and if you're a lover of blue cheese and you want to encourage other people to do it, taste it yourself. Go for the slightly older cheese. It's counterintuitive. I know on cheddars you might go for a younger, kind of milder cheese rather than an intense, stronger cheddar, but with Stilton and blue cheeses, they get softer, creamier and more mellow as they age. Just pick that soft, creamy, mellow cheese. And usually, as Michael said, if you offer it with some compliments that are slightly sweeter, people usually find that actually pleasantly surprised when they chase the blue cheese. Here we go. So Cotswold. So this is one of our better selling cheeses in the States, I believe, Martin.
It's more than better. It's the biggest selling cheese. Cotswold can only be made by Long Clawson. Cotswold brand is, as you can see on the top, it is trademarked, and there's only Long Clawson that make Cotswold. So it's a brand recognition. A number of people think Cotswold is just a generic name for double Gloucester mixed with chive and onion, but Cotswold is only made by Long Clawson. We take a great deal of care with the base cheese and using the finest ingredients, but it's a very, very popular cheese in America. Great for cooking, where it's wonderful in crumbled in an omelette or baked potatoes. It works well with nachos. and it's a great entry level cheese for a blended cheese product.
Some of the best double Gloucester produced in the UK, and blended with good quality chives and onion, and it gives a superb savoury cheese, and it is, you know, our biggest, strongest seller in the US. So we couldn't talk to you today as customers in the US without mentioning Cotswold. And, you know, probably one of the single biggest accolades of a successful cheese is that everybody out there wants to copy our cheese because it is so successful. So, you know, always you look for the word Cotswold, then you know it's authentic and it's come from Long Clawson, and it's not a Me Too copy. But it is a very soft, creamy cheese that we spend quite a lot of time making sure we get a perfect balance between the onions and chives to give that superb savoury cheese for a cheese board. And the reason we mentioned it with Stilton, not only is it a big seller in the States, but it balances perfectly on a cheese board with Stilton. So if you was looking to create a cheese board, I'm sure you'd be looking for maybe a soft cheese from France, a Brie, Camembert. You know, Stilton goes without saying. I won't be here today without saying that Stilton's a must on the cheese board, but we would say take one of our sweet flavoured white Stiltons and also put either the Huntsman or Cotswold, and we're going to talk about the Huntsman in a minute, as a nice savoury cheese to go on that cheese board. So it is, you know, a nice orange cheese flecked with the onions and chives that gives a perfectly balanced savoury flavour.
I think one of the other points to mention, Kim, is that all the blended cheeses that we produce do not contain any form of additive or emulsifier or preservatives or any form of artificial ingredient. I know it's quite important now in the consumer's eyes, but you know, all we use is literally freeze-dried chives and onions and double Gloucester, and the same with the fruit. We're not using fruit that's dried with sulfur dioxide. We're not using potassium sorbates. So it's about as natural as it can be. We think that's very important in this day and age.
We produce what we would term in the UK as clean deck cheese. It's very simple. We don't put those additives in. And basically our challenge would be that you should be able to produce the Cotswold the same as us, just by going to the supermarket, buying a piece of double Gloucester, moving along the aisle where the spices are and buying some dried onion and chives. If you can't buy it from the supermarket, if you're not happy to buy it to use this as an ingredient at home, we wouldn't include it into any of our cheeses. And that goes with the white Stilton. So, you know, pure white Stilton and pure apricots, nothing else. We challenge ourselves. You need to be able to walk the aisle of a reasonably sized supermarket and be able to buy the ingredients that you'd use happily at home as a cooking ingredient. Let's move on to the Huntsman, which is the next one. I think you've got.
I have a little bit of pairing with this. You know, this has been one of my favorite cheeses. When teaching this in the classroom, one of the things that you have to say is that this is a very versatile cooking cheese, because these additives in here really make a difference. And you could do this, the dressing up a baked potato, you could dress up scrambled eggs, you dress up tacos. There's so much that you can do with this, but just by itself, it's so interesting on a cheese board. It's a beautiful looking cheese, so it looks good on the board as well. So you have this really interesting looking texture to it as well. So I wanted to go a little bit of savory on this. I wanted to bring a little bit more of things that, you know, you want to have something that, first one we had a little bit of sweetness. Well, what I did here is that I have a really nice mousse, and this is chicken and pork and a little bit of truffle in it. And so what it's going to do is it's going to give us the additional flavors, kind of like having a little bit of a sandwich here, and the cheese is going to bring up a little bit more of the tanginess. You know, a lot of people are afraid of pâtés or mousses on that, but really we're talking about a really nice pork and chicken blend that is absolutely fantastic and really easy to pair up with. And then to be able to hold this, you know, it's pretty dense. So I'm using the Three Little Pigs. Both of these are Three Little Pigs, and this is the Petite Toast. And so I've almost always, one of my go-tos for pairing up this cheese by itself has been a brown ale. And I've used that for a very long time. And just recently, I realized that it doesn't really bring out as much of the tanginess. So I shifted to a red ale, and this happens to be, again, a local brewery where this is a red ale that's also an IPA. So it's a red IPA, and it's just brings out more of the tang, brings out more of the onion without really interfering with the clarity of the cheese.
I think your pairing there is excellent, and it brings to my mind one of the pairings I like with mature Stilton cheese, which an ultimate sandwich for me is really good char roasted beef with Stilton cheese. So a bit like you've gone for a pate with that cheese, with Stilton, and really soft creamy blue Stilton with a very nice rare roasted beef with a bit of char on the outside, makes an excellent balanced sandwich.
Yeah, you literally could take a piece of toast and slather on the mousse, and then shred up some of this cheese on it, and it is just fabulous in flavor. It's so rich, creamy. I love the tanginess. I love the freshness of the onion and chive, and it's not overpowering. And that's one of the things about getting a blend right. Now, obviously, you guys have been doing this for a very long time, but in America, we have a lot of companies that have got into flavoring cheddars and other cheeses, and they can be overhanded. In other words, you don't taste the cheese at all, you taste the blend. And here, it's absolutely perfect. The double Gloucester comes out, it's just so creamy and buttery, and then you pick up the nice onion and chive. Just so well done.
One of the arts of blending cheese, Michael, is to select the ingredients on their strength or flavour and to match that with the base cheese. So if you're going to use a chili cheddar, for instance, if you use a mild cheddar, the chili will overpower it. So you've got to get the balance and the strength of flavours between the various cheeses that you decide to use for blending and the ingredients. And it's a real art to get that, because we always believe that you shouldn't have one flavour that dominates the blended cheese. So you need to be able to taste the double Gloucester and the chives and the onion, or the sweetness of mango and ginger, which Kim will talk about in a minute. But that's really important. It's a real art to blending cheese. People just think you can take some cheddar and stick a handful of ingredients in it and off you go. But over the years, we've tasted some dreadful stuff in here. Absolutely shocking. But it is an art, and we spend months developing blended cheese, because when it's in the pack and it's sat there for a few weeks, the flavours alter as well. So you've got to do it throughout the life of the cheese to ensure you get a consistency.
So the Huntsman, again, is a very, very popular cheese that we make and sell in America. And, we talked about the nice, creamy, subtle flavour of double Gloucester. We balance that by making a cheese and handcrafting it. So we cut the thin slices of double Gloucester, we ring the Stilton into thin layers, and then we hand form that into a layered cheese of double Gloucester with the Stilton, and you get a really nice balanced cheese with a slightly soft, subtle flavours, sweet flavours coming from the double Gloucester, with a slight bitterness coming from the Stilton, and that makes for an ultimate piece of cheese that looks very eye appealing and interesting to eat, put on a cheese board. So I think, again, Michael, you've got some interesting pairings on the side on your table with the Huntsman. Just show people to hold it. So you've got the nice even layers of Stilton and double Gloucester. So you know, they're evenly balanced, so you've got the same amount of Stilton and Gloucester in the cheese.
Creating pairings are about knowing the characteristics of something and knowing why it would work to be able to work together. But sometimes when you have multiple characteristics that play in there, trying to find something that's going to work together can be challenging because you have, I wouldn't say opposites, but you know, you have a very distinct difference between the double Gloucester and the Stilton. So when I was working with this, I was trying to think about, you know, what would be a good complement. And what I've used before for blues is being able to use a fig chutney or a fig spread. And so that's what I decided to do. The Perseverance Society does this amazing fig spread, no sugars, no nothing like that. And I really thought that it would be fun to be able to put these two together, but I really was guessing on whether or not they would actually work together. It actually brings all these together because, as we know with the Stilton, we like to have a little bit of sweet fruit that goes along with it. With the blue, or with the cheddar, we like to have a little bit of fruitness, not as much like apple going on there. So I think a fig fit right in between. It has a little bit of sweetness. It has a little bit of the fruitiness to it. And then beer-wise, I need something, because there's so many flavors here, I need something to clean my palate. So I chose Highland Brewery out of Asheville, and this is their Gaelic ale. It's like a pale ale, but it's got more maltiness to it. So you get the cleaning and you get a little bit of maltiness.
The fig is an interesting choice. That works superbly well with Stilton. So that's why I think it's picking up nicely with your Huntsman. But also traditionally in the UK, people would try things like quince paste as well. That's really nice. I'm not sure whether that's readily available in the States, but quince paste works well. And equally, you don't have to go to preserves and chutney and paste. If you get a really ripe, juicy pear, fresh pear, just slice the pear to eat with the cheese. And sometimes when you're looking for a palate cleanser, just a slightly tart, really crisp apple does the job. So sometimes just the fresh fruit on its own, a few nuts, a few dried apricots, actually will do the same as some of those accompaniments that you picked today. You know, and again, what I said earlier, it's half the fun is trying, experimenting. Sometimes it doesn't work. And then sometimes you're really surprised that you hit across a combination of cheeses and different things that are absolutely superb for your palate. Rutland Red, before we move on to the blended cheeses, it was always made by the Stilton manufacturers. We're the only ones that continue to make it. It's an air-dried cheese. It's very traditional. It never sees a vac bag. It dries out, it firms up, and it has a very, very flaky texture, but it is sweet and nutty in flavour. And you know, I'd encourage you, if you ever get the opportunity, you ever see it, to try some traditional Rutland Red. It is completely different to a red Leicester cheese because it's air dried, it's got a traditional coat, and it has a different flavour and texture. White Stilton and Cranberry, one of the very, very traditional cheeses, now one of the best-selling blended cheeses in the UK. The UK palate's taken to that kind of very sweet, tart cranberry flavour. So what we have found, as people have started to enjoy cranberry in all forms in the UK, whether it be a cranberry chutney or a preserve or a cranberry juice or just eating dry preserved cranberries, is that it balances really well with the white Stilton. So you get that slight lactic tangy cheese. You get a subtle sweetness initially coming from the cranberry when you try it, and then there's just a lingering tartness coming from the cranberries at the end. But it is quite a clean, refreshing cheese on your palate. White Stilton apricot, don't jump to the mango and ginger yet. And An equally strong selling cheese is the White Stilton and apricot. And again, I think they balance the flavour and sweetness that you get from the apricots. You don't necessarily appreciate, and I've tried the dried apricots we used before we put in the cheese, but then just putting it in the cheese seems to bring out the sweetness of the apricot. So you get that nice, again, clean lactic tartness from the cheese and a real nice sweet back note from the apricot at the end of the eating the cheese. This goes back to Long Clawson trying to produce a cheese quite a number of years ago. We produced a mango cheese and it wasn't particularly successful. We still make it for some customers. We produced the White Stilton and ginger, and what we found is that it was very fiery. You got an intense fiery heat from the ginger. You know, as Martin said, you know, we don't give up, we try and we persevere. And you know, one of our development teams said, well, actually, we've probably got a really nice balance here between the two sweeter cheese from the mango and the two intense fiery notes from the ginger. And what we actually did was blend the cheese and played around with it and got the perfect balance of sweetness coming from the mango and the fireness from the ginger. And when you taste the cheese, you start off, you know, with the lovely tartness coming and tanginess coming from the White Stilton. Then you pick up the sweetness from the mango, and almost initially it's a little bit too sweet, and then just as you start to eat it and chew the cheese, all of a sudden it kicks in. You get a fiery heat from the ginger, and then as it sits in your mouth, the sweetness and the fire balance out to produce, I guess, one of our best strong selling blended cheeses. And you know, if I ever go to a party, people always say bring some mango and ginger, and it's something people like. And you know, if you ask people to try it, they go, I'm not sure about it, doesn't sound particularly appetizing. But once people have tried the mango and ginger, you just say nothing, you just watch them and you see them keep going back and eating it until it's all gone. So Michael, I think you've got some interesting pairings for the mango and ginger.
A couple weeks ago, I had Oliver Turner from Virginia Chutney and Perseverance Society on, and he was talking about different types of chutneys and that, and he said, and I have this on my YouTube channel, that's a little 1-minute blurb, but he said if a alien would come to Earth and ask what was the most common condiment in the world, what would it be? And he said it would be mango chutney. You know, India is big in mango, the southern United States, the Caribbean, and of course you guys in England. You know, he even joked that, well, maybe ketchup, but ketchup was a chutney as well. And so on my post, I got a lot of people that come and go, no, mustard is the other thing, but I love mango. I think that this is a really wonderful balance of flavors. You know, the cranberries is always going to be something that we have right around Thanksgiving. You know, it's a great holiday style cheese, and these all look wonderful on a cheese board. So, you know, when I was thinking of pairing this up, you know, there isn't anything I can do. It does it itself. So the best thing that I could think of would be the Effie's, the pecan biscuits, and the cheese, and that's virtually it. I really wouldn't want to add anything. I thought about, well, adding some honey to it or doing something like that, but you know what? Everything that you want is already here. So the only thing you need is a good vehicle to take it from the plate to your mouth, and that's what this does. So pairing this is that, again, it does so much on its own that I went with just a traditional wheat beer. This is Florida Avenue Brewing. This is their Weiss beer. It's just very, very simple. It's a little bready with a little bit of carbonation, and that's it. Again, this does so much. It's already got everything that you would want to have, and I love ginger. You know, I think that is a underused or we don't use it enough because it just has so many, I guess, limits in there what you can do with it. But with here, this is absolutely perfect.
Michael, it's interesting. There's a comment on the chat from one of the customers saying that she would describe the cheese as slightly cheesecakey to the customers. You know, thank you for that comment. Excellent. We would describe it. And also to the point when we talk to some of the customers in the UK, we actually say it makes for a very lazy dessert, because if you whip some cream to stiff peaks and actually just crumble this and fold it in and put it onto a biscuit base, you can actually make a really fresh, very tasty, almost instant lazy dessert. So that description of describing it as slightly cheesecake, absolutely excellent way of describing it, I think. Yeah, I think it, from my experience, it needs something that's maybe slightly dry, because it is quite sweet in its own right. But, you know, you're right, Michael. The fantastic thing about cheese is ready to eat. It's literally good to go. But I think one of the biggest mistakes I'd like to get across, particularly with Stilton cheese, is it is ready to eat, but it just needs a bit of care and a bit of thought. And as you've demonstrated today, take a little bit of time thinking about the things that you're going to put with the cheese, the people are going to eat with the cheese, whether it's crusted breads or crackers. But the most important tip for me, single tip, is make sure the cheese comes out of the fridge and it's allowed to sit at room temperature, because you're not actually tasting the cheese. A lot of what you get on the cheese, you're actually smelling the volatiles. Allow your cheese to breathe and come to room temperature to truly, truly get the best flavour and texture when you consume it. It's the single biggest tip I can get to anybody. Pairings are very individual. People have different palates. You'll decide what you really like and what you enjoy, but make sure you allow your cheese to breathe, come up to temperature. We've just gone through extensive pairings. But just in summary, you know, the Stilton Huntsman, the Cotswold are savoury, quite robust flavours. So when you pairing them with drink, think of something that's got a slightly sweet note, you know, some superb craft ales with subtle sweetness coming through, the ciders we talked about. Very traditionally, you can't go wrong with it, you know, but a lot of younger people want to steer away from traditional things. Would be something like a Taylor's 10 or 20-year-old port, or one of their fine tawny or vintage. You know, I picked Taylor's, it's something we're familiar with, it's something that we've tasted with our cheese and know it goes very well. But, you know, step out of the comfort zone as Michael's done today and try one of those craft beers and sweet ales. And as he said, there's some fantastic products out there that work equally well. And when you think of Stilton, don't just think it is a cheese board cheese. It's very versatile. It's got that beautiful, savoury, umami flavour. And as an cooking ingredient, a tiny piece of Stilton goes a long way and adds a subtle balance to a lot of dishes. And I think there's a couple of slides we'll just flick through to give an idea, but I went on the internet and you could do that equally well. And there's lots of ideas from different people who've tried Stilton and come up with some superb recipe ideas. But, you know, think about pastas or soups or risottos. It just lends itself to anything. Pizza, you know, Stilton's a perfect cooking ingredient. And we'll just flick through the slides, just a couple of things. Simple dip. Get some mayonnaise, crumble some superb mature Stilton. You know, you can flavour that how you want. You can just have the mayonnaise in Stilton. You know, at home we like to just put a few dashes of Tabasco in it and just serve that with some simple vegetable accompaniments like celery, carrots. You know, soups, broccoli and Stilton's very traditional in the UK. I think I've seen it in the States. But equally, I've travelled to Germany and was pleasantly surprised to be presented with cauliflower and Stilton soup, which worked absolutely well. And recently I've seen a recipe that came from the States. Somebody developed a pear and Stilton and was serving it as a chilled soup in the hot months. So, you know, be adventurous, try it. It does lend itself to lots of different uses. And without a doubt, one of my favourites, we've got traditional English sausage. which I know you can buy in the States because I've got friends in the States, and there's an English butcher in Texas and he makes English sausage. You can buy them online and he ships them all over the States. But the Stilton and mash, get a really good potato, something with flavour, make the mash how you like it. A bit of cream, bit of butter, but just fold in. Don't cream it so it disappears. Just fold in some chunks of Stilton just before you're going to serve it. So the heated potato just softens that Stilton, and when you eat the mash, the Stilton savouriness comes through and complements your dish. And that works equally well with steaks. You know, you can take a baked potato, scoop it, you know, crumble your mashed Stilton, just put it in, flash it in the oven and do a twice baked potato and serve that with a very good steak. Ultimately, you can't go wrong by melting Stilton on a burger. It just is probably the best of compliments, and there's lots and lots of different ways you can serve a burger. But if you want to just try and have the ultimate burger, try your Stilton on the burger. And finally, we talked about the Rutland Red. I know macaroni cheese is almost institution in the States like Stilton is in the UK, but if you ever see any Rutland Red, it makes for the best macaroni cheese you're ever going to taste in your life. You know, Stilton is very versatile. You can use it in lots of ways. Don't think about it just as a cheese board cheese, but at the end of the day, Stilton will make any cheese board special and any special occasion absolutely fantastic. So if you want to make, you know, a family occasion, any occasion, a memorable occasion, find the ultimate piece of Stilton and you'll get fantastic feedback. Thank you for taking your time out today to listen to me talking about my passion about Stilton cheese. Hopefully some of that's rubbed off on you. I think Michael's going to leave some contacts for Martin and myself, and we're very happy. If people have got questions, we'll email, but if anybody's got questions, I'm happy to hang on with Michael for a minute or two and try and answer your questions. So pass back to you, Michael.
All righty. Well, you know, I have to say that I've known you guys for a long time, and I've been through several of the seminars and educational events you've done. And this is probably the most thorough presentation of really getting to know more about the cheese, the history, their farms, and that I've ever seen. So, and it was nice to be able to taste through the products. I'm very happy that here in Tampa, it was very easy to be able to find the cheeses. They were available at 2 locations here. 2 different brands, so it was really nice to be able to you know, just walk in, pick up the cheese, and be able to taste along with you guys. So I'm really happy with that. So is there anything you'd like to say? I know, Martin, you didn't really get a lot to say here, but have something you'd like to leave us with?
Well, I've just been reading the comments on the question and answer page. Erica's asking about, well, first of all, she said thank you for your time today. I'm delighted you've joined us, Erica, so thank you very much for bearing with us. But you're asking us about personal pairings. Personally, mine would be Blue Stilton, but I actually like Stilton with a sweet white sauterne, suitably chilled, on a Graham's cracker biscuit, and I put a tiny little bit of honey on it because I just think that's perfect for my personal palate.
And my personal pairing probably couldn't be a bigger contrast with Martin. You know, I love a really good baked jacket potato, long and slow so the skin's superb and crispy. Then take the potato out, just cream it up with butter, and put some Stilton back into it. Just give it a couple of minutes in the oven just to soften the Stilton, and then put one of those really nice sweet chutneys on top of it and serve it with an absolutely stunning honey baked ham. And I always drink that. I love traditional ales. I go for one of the real more intense dark stout type ales with that. So 2 completely different views on that. And I think, you know, as we said everybody's palate's different, and part of the fun is the adventure of trying different things and not getting put off occasionally when you try something and it doesn't work. Just move on. You'll find the perfect pairing for your palate.
I want to thank you too for taking the time, and especially over the last couple of days where we've worked putting things together and taking the time to be able to have the proper materials and information and all that. I really greatly appreciate that, and love your cheeses, and looking forward to one day being able to get together. And like I said, we'll do something at the International Cheese Awards, and maybe gin, maybe port, maybe, something.
Thank you, Michael, and thank everybody for taking the time to listen to Martin and myself this afternoon.
Yeah, indeed, Michael. Look forward to doing it again sometime. Thank you.
Absolutely. You guys take care and be safe, and we will talk with you soon.
Bye.
Thank you, Michael. Bye.
Bye-bye.